Sri Lanka's most powerful news brand.
Newsfirst, NewsLine with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And a jolly good morning to you. This is Newsline, live as always from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And it's a lovely morning out there in Colombo. And at this time of the morning, I absolutely love it. There's no traffic. It's brilliant. And it's brilliant to be around. And it's a day in which we all should be proud of today. Because today is when President Wijewardena makes a special announcement on the bond report. He's due to make a statement, and we expect that to be made by midday today. In the meantime, to discuss, in fact, to ask about his own flashback of events, and what we pose the question, how central is the central bank when it comes to the political landscape of this country currently? To answer that question and to join us with a few more details, of course, is retired Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, once a central banker, always a central banker, Dr. W.A. Wijewardena. Very good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, Faraz.
Wonderful to have you here, and all good wishes for the new year.
Same to you, Faraz.
Now, Dr. Wijewardena, when you joined the central bank, all those years ago, and you've spent all your working life at the central bank, and so you never really ceased to be a central banker. But when you now stand back and you look down and you observe sort of like a fly on the wall, you look down and think, oh my goodness, what's going on? Did you ever dream that the central bank will play such a role in shaping the political landscape of the country?
Faraz, in fact, I joined the central bank in early 1970s. At that time, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka was the most prestigious public institution which a young graduate would have sought his employment. In fact, I was offered employment in so many other places as well, University, People's Bank, Bank of Ceylon, income tax and so forth. Of all the alternative employments that I was offered when I passed out from the university, I chose the central bank because that was the best institution at that time for a person to develop his career, his intellectual capacity, his professionalism, and also the opportunity that it gives you to become one of the leading economists of the country. And if I look at what has happened during the last 2-year period to Central Bank of Sri Lanka, not only me,
yes,
but also all the people who have retired from the central bank, as well as who still work in the central bank, they feel ashamed of the events that have taken place in the central bank for us. The main reason is it was never expected. Nobody expected that central bank would come down to such a low position with respect to public criticism, attack by various political parties, then the media, and also the international institutions. Now, for example, since I function as an independent analyst and researcher, always whenever a mission from outside Sri Lanka visit Sri Lanka to find out exactly what has happened to the particular bond scam that took place, they always see me in order to get an independent opinion about the facts that has happened. So when we look at all these factors, for us, it's not a very happy encounter that I have or anyone else would have with respect to the recent developments in the central bank.
I see. And isn't it amazing that how the political landscape appears to be affected by the events that went on at the central bank?
Well, I think for us, one of the bond scam, actually it's not a single bond scam, it's a series of bond scams that had started from, say, February 2015, ending up in early April 2016.
Yeah.
The series of bond scams, and actually many analysts outside the central bank have branded it as the biggest financial scam.
Well, the
country.
Attorney General's Department said that.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who looks at the data and information relating to what has actually happened, the conclusion that he can reach is that it's the biggest financial scam in Sri Lanka as well as perhaps in South Asia. And that single issue had actually shattered the entire political landscape of this country to its foundation. And of course, we don't know what would happen in the future, because it's a good example for Sri Lankans also to find out how a government which has ignored all the warnings given to it by the media, by the opposition, by independent analysts, for ignoring the same thing and allowing it to boil to such a critical level.
And to in a way to overspill too, because
it has overspilled, and also now it has become not only a financial issue for Sri Lanka, it has now become a political issue, and perhaps it will become an international issue unless it is tackled very carefully at this point of time for us. Because the international organizations always look at the central bank and its credibility whenever they want to invest in a country, and it has to be tackled very carefully even at this stage.
I'm glad you're here on a program, because when we analyze all this wonderful information that came out of the Presidential Commission inquiry, because it is significantly more detailed information than what came out in COP 1 and COP 2, if you may call those.
Yes, Faraz, because the reason is now I was associated with the three lawyers committee appointed by Prime Minister immediately after the first bond scam hit the market. And that was actually an administrative committee, and it had no any powers to summon witnesses and cross-examine them under oath.
Because it is administrative.
It's an administrative committee. It's an administrative committee simply for the purpose of guiding the Prime Minister, nothing else. So therefore, the evidence that was placed before was not actually the type of evidence which it would have got.
Right.
Then when it came to COP, for us, the first COP committee as well as the second COP committee, since the COP inquiries are conducted in camera, they are not revealed to the members of the public.
Right.
And as a result, the public can actually guess what would have happened.
Right.
And also, one of the mistakes, defects of the COP inquiries, as I have seen, is that there is no any directed questioning. Because the COP has about, say, 25 members.
So uncontrolled, there's no theme.
No theme, nothing. I mean, it goes everywhere. And when one COP member asks a question, and when the particular party, before he gives his answer, another COP member intervenes and, takes it completely to an irrelevant and...
I'm tempted to say that perhaps this is a bit of a kangaroo court.
Yeah, I mean, it has no meaning, nothing. So therefore, when the Presidential Commission was appointed by President in order to investigate into the bond issues during that particular period, the Commission had to follow an accepted route and accepted practice.
Right.
In that, the people who gave evidence, they gave evidence under oath. Now, for example, I was summoned by the Presidential Commission as an expert witness, and I was grilled by the Presidential Commission for 4 days.
This is the Bond Commission.
Bond Commission, and 4 days, and I had to give evidence under oath. So as a result, I had to tell the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth And as a result, there is no any, in fact, when you are cross-examined by the lawyers of the AG department as well as the lawyers appearing for other interested parties, always the truth comes out, and therefore you are not in a position to hide anything for us. So when it comes to the Presidential Commission, that has been the best thing that has happened in the case of this inquiry into the bond incidents.
Yes. And as a central banker, are you astonished?
Well, of course, not only me, everybody. I mean, in the case of the central bank, for us, as I told you, the central bank is the prime institution in this country regulating the financial system, regulating the monetary system, and also it's the advisor to the government. So all these roles of the central bank are tarnished when the central bank is attacked by outside parties because of a scandal that has taken place within the central bank unattended.
How angry do you think the central bankers are now?
They are all angry. I mean, everybody inside the central bank except a few people had been very angry, and they have expressed their anger to me in person. And but of course, as within the culture of the central bank, the governor is a very powerful person, and as a result, unless you become a whistleblower, there is no possibility for any central bank within the central bank to make an open opposition to what the governor has been doing. So that is why.
So a little bit, if I want to, I don't like sense, but a little bit of a little Hitler.
Well, it's a kind of a thing. I mean, governor has enormous powers. I mean, which is not a good thing, because no one should be given powers, in my opinion, without controls, without checks, so that the person will actually use those powers to his personal benefits. So, because of those reasons, even though people were angry, they were not able to come up with any opposition to what had been taking place within the central bank. But what they did was, as you have seen, there had been a number of whistleblowers who had leaked vital information.
I want to relate a short little story to you, because I have a question at the end of that. The story is like this. In Britain, we had a high-flying, blue-eyed member of Margaret Thatcher's called Jonathan Aitken. He was a senior cabinet minister, tipped to lead the Conservative Party and all that. And he sued one of the newspapers in Britain for saying that they had suggested that he was lying when he claimed that, as the minister in charge of defense, that he had a meeting with some Saudis in Paris and that he had paid his own hotel bill. The newspaper claimed otherwise, that the Saudis had paid. He lost, he won that battle against the newspaper. And obviously that newspaper gave a lot of publicity to the fact that they lost. But a young woman who was working in the call center of the British Airways ticketing office, in the sales, in the main call center, had read and seen this story on television. And she contacted the authorities and told them that that was simply not possible, because Mr. Aitken claimed that his wife had paid the bill. Because this young lady remembered that while she was working, she did a booking for Mrs. Aitken and their daughter for a different route altogether. And at the time that Mr. Aitken claimed that his wife was paying the bill at the George V in Paris, in fact, his wife and daughter were landing several hundred miles away in Geneva. But obviously the paper went back to court and he lost. Mr. Aitken ended up in prison for perverting the course of justice. He, a successful man, was reduced to nothing. He actually went to prison. Now then, I want You'd remember that story. This is a man who was tipped to become the Prime Minister of Britain and leader, anyway, of the Conservative Party. I want you to leave that there. Now I'm going to tell you another story, which is factual, and you'll know about this. Ministers Kabir Hashim, Malik Samaravikrama, and the Prime Minister himself claimed that there was a requirement of 15 billion to pay for some road contractors, whatever. They said he was 18, but they had 3 and all that. They seem to have agreed that he was 15 billion. The Prime Minister said so, as much, not only under oath inside the Commission, but also in Parliament with parliamentary privilege. Now then, we have a DST, a Deputy Secretary of Treasury, under oath, who said that there was no such requirement.
I think I will go by what the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury has revealed at the Commission file.
Yes, but my question is this.
Yeah.
Does the central bank, the governor, and all his officials sit down and dream and think, oh, today Sri Lanka will need 10 billion, or how is it that you all at the central bank know what to do?
Actually, the fund requirements of the government comes from the General Treasury. It's not something that is created within the central bank for us.
So in short, the central bank is guided
by the Treasury. That's why I said I would go by the evidence given by the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury before the Commission, because he is the one who knows. Because the practice in the Treasury has been for us, it's the one which maintains the cash flow of the government. It knows how much cash would come into the Treasury, how much cash is demanded by various spending agencies, and what is the shortfall. And when they estimate the shortfall, they just give instructions to the central bank, raise money in order to meet the shortfall. And if the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury has said that there is no such cash requirement, I don't think anyone else can
challenge that.
Not challenge, I mean refute it.
Right.
Refute it. That's the practice.
And when we then talk of Westminster-style politics, in Britain, if this had happened, all those three ministers, including the Prime Minister, would have had to resign.
Well, of course.
They wouldn't have been told, they would have just done it.
Yeah, of course. I will actually, in fairness to the Prime Minister and the 3 ministers you have mentioned, probably they would have been misguided or misinformed by somebody. That's the thing. That's the thing, that they'll have to now come up with the person who has misguided and take action against them, that particular party.
Is this because we have brought in people who patently were unaware of exactly how the central bank works?
That's one reason, because the actually the person to be appointed as the governor of the central bank for us, normally he's a person who has been groomed from within the central bank, and therefore he has an institutional history, memory, and also he knows the procedure of the central bank as well as the general treasury. But if someone from outside is appointed, he has to learn it very quickly. I know there are 2 or 3 governors who came from outside, but in fairness to them, they all listen to the central bank officials and then they learn very quickly. And in this case, what has happened is that kind of listening process has not.
Governor Wijewardena was.
Governor Wijewardena is from within the central bank. Right. I mean, he's a central bank. But if you look at a person like Mr. H.B. Dissanayake, who was the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, then Mr. Sunil Mandis, then Mr. Ajit Niwat Cabral, who came from outside. But all these people, I recall, they listen to the professional staff of the central bank, and if the professional staff says, okay, Governor, you can't do this, they actually accepted that position. They didn't want to dictate his views on the professional staff.
Another way of what you're saying is they didn't depart from established procedures.
Exactly. So that is why there was no any mistake done by all these people during those years. So that's the biggest problem. So in this case,
it's sad, isn't it? Because you are an educated person. You had a choice of where to work at the time, all those years ago. You chose the central bank. You spend your whole life there, and you're necessarily very, very proud of that fact. And then when you see some outsider marching in, waltzing in there, and changing the system and ruining the credibility and the integrity of the very institution, it must make you a very angry man.
Very angry. Not only me, Faraz, as I told you, all the retired officers of the central bank, as well as those who work within the central bank today, they have been angry. There's no question about it.
I know a chap who worked in one of our group companies at Eslon long years ago when he was a young man. He's now, I think, about over 70.
Dr. Atapera.
No. It's a person I know from our village. And he, in later life, he did rather well for himself. And, he had a few little restaurants. And that meant doing a lot of construction work and so on. He always tells me, I met him a month ago. He said to me, when I buy pipes or any fittings, I buy Eslon. But that I said, why? I said, maybe you get a better deal somewhere else. And he said, no, I don't. He said, listen, you don't wind me up. He said, I do that because I worked there a long time ago, and I'm very proud of that. And that's the same thing that I'm trying to say about the central bank.
Same thing. I mean, that's why, anyone who has chosen a career in the central bank, for us, it has always been a lifelong career. Very few people who have left the central bank in mid-career and joined other institutions. And almost everybody who had joined the central bank had retired as a central banker. So because they are very proud. And that pride still remains there. Even I can say, even the people who are in the central bank today, they also carry the same pride in them.
And today, I know that if we can only wait a few more hours, we may find out. But what do you expect?
Well,
what do you expect the president to say?
I don't know, but of course the evidence.
What would you like? Okay, what would you like the president to say?
Well, what you have to look at for us is what was done by the Presidential Commission into the bond issues was a public inquiry.
Yeah.
And the evidence given before the commission was available to the members of the public through media. And everyone knows what has been presented there and what the answers given by the people who had given evidence. And therefore people have already formed some opinion about the entire incidents that have taken place. So when it comes to that kind of a report, the practice in the past has been for us, it would be released as a sessional paper to public domain.
I see.
For public consumption. And this particular practice was carried by Sri Lanka government, I think, till about, say, 1995. It was terminated only after that. Before 1994, whatever the presidential commissions or royal commissions that have been appointed by the government, the reports were released in the form of sessional papers and they were available to members of the public. But of course today you don't have to issue them as sessional paper because we have the more effective communication methods today and you can release it to the website of the government. So what I would expect the president to do is to release it immediately to the media, to the members of the public, and then the public will know what has happened.
But what about action?
No, action would be taken by the government, and also that's the part. That's the second.
That's the second.
Yeah, but of course the members of the public have a right to know what has happened.
But in an ambience where, for example, Dr. Wijewardena, yesterday, I think it was yesterday, the Prime Minister's announcement of submitting the Election Commissioner's Gazette notification to Parliament. There's absolutely no need to do all that. And so perhaps in my mind, when we're talking about departure process and procedure, perhaps in my mind, the Prime Minister is trying to introduce new amendments like they tried previously in the 19th Amendment. during the 19th Amendment. You know, if you remember, there was a kottu. We called it a kottu version. And now, if you also remember, he's passed this new Exchange Control Act. And there are certain issues on that hasn't been addressed properly, and there are certain benefits to others, especially former ministers, who it may be easier to absolve them of some violations of the former act, and so on. So when we are looking at this intense departure from procedure, and like this elections commission, the Commissioner's Gazette going into Parliament, don't you think that the people of Sri Lanka are beginning to look at all these events rather suspiciously?
Yeah, I mean, people, when a government is not transparent,
yeah,
and if it does things which it has not earlier promised,
yeah,
people always become suspicious, and it's a situation like that. That's why I said that the President will have to release the report immediately for use by the members of the public, so that public will come to know exactly what has happened. And nobody then can suppress the information. Otherwise, people will interpret it in a different ways.
Indeed.
And they might comment and say different things.
Yeah.
So, in order to avoid that kind of an ambiguity, President should release this report to public domain immediately.
One of our viewers has just sent me, I don't know whether it's male, female, and where it is from. It's a Sri Lankan mobile number, and it says here, Dr. Wijewardena, it says, why is the Prime Minister misleading citizens? There is no voice against them. Only NewsLine is exposing them. Well, thank you. It's actually Newsfirst, is everybody at Newsfirst, but the other media too. And just in case our colleagues at the Daily News thought they'd forgotten all about them. Well, no, we haven't. Well done. 100 years and still going. My colleague, Bantu Jayasekara, did perhaps one of the shortest stints as its editor, with 2 years. But from a little boy from almost nowhere who went to Trinity and who became the editor of the Daily News is no mean feat, especially when you had to serve a very, very political master. So well done, the Daily News. 100 years in the going, and we do wish that you'd join the mainstream media and become as robust as everybody else. But well done, you know, it's good going. And do remember that Bandula did 2 years there. And it's no mean feat to become the editor of the Daily News. Dr. Wijewardena, so today we'll be looking forward to these events.
Yeah.
And but the Sri Lankans are a resilient lot, aren't we?
Well, of course, what happens for us is, even though the political authorities feel that people forget these things, they never forget.
They don't.
And that's the biggest mistake that the politicians make, because they, if they have done something wrong, it will visit on them subsequently as a bigger force. And at that time, I know none of the politicians have been able to save themselves. So that's the history.
They seem to forget every now and then, don't they?
Yeah, but the people don't forget.
The people don't
forget. Specifically in the modern era of this advanced communication, media are very powerful. They have their own blogs and all kinds of things, and therefore no one can suppress information today for us.
And hopefully, rather like, you know, certain world events, like, you know, you probably remember exactly what you were doing when John F. Kennedy was killed, and you heard that information. Perhaps today you will remember where you were when President Sirisena finally makes his statement. I'm told that they'll be recording it about 10 o'clock, and then it'll be available to the media soon after then. So watch this space, watch our networks, listen to our radio stations, and we will bring you the news as it happens. But on that note, Dr. Wijewardena, Again, wish you and your family all the very best for the new year.
Same to you,
on
Farah.
behalf of Team News First.
Same
and
to
it's
you,
a very
Farah.
big team.
Same to you, Farah.
Thank you. And that's the way it was on Newsline on Wednesday, the 3rd of January 2018, on the day that we expect the bond statement from the President to come out. Take care and God bless you.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.